That's all it took to doom an entire air force. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai's mocking chuckle as he read the intelligence report about America's new failure, the F6F Hellcat. September 1st, 1943. Rabaul Airfield, New Britain. Sakai's one good eye, the other lost to American gunners, scanned words that made him laugh out loud in the humid operations tent. The Americans have produced a new fighter, heavy as a bomber, wide as a transport. They call it Hellcat. Our intelligence suggests it weighs twice our Zero, another American failure of design. Around him, elite Japanese naval aviators joined the laughter. For 2 years, their sleek Zeros had dominated Pacific skies like aerial samurai. British Hurricanes, American P-40s, Dutch Brewster Buffaloes, all had fallen before the Zero's guns. This bloated American monstrosity would be no different. But here's what's absolutely mind-blowing. In exactly 30 days, this failure would begin the systematic annihilation of Japanese naval aviation. The F6F Hellcat would achieve a kill ratio of 19-1, destroying 5,223 enemy aircraft while losing only 270 in aerial combat. Those 12 seconds of laughter would echo through the screams of 18,000 Japanese pilots falling from Pacific skies. The mathematical arrogance. Japanese confidence wasn't just swagger. It was mathematics written in blood. Since Pearl Harbor, the Imperial Japanese Naval Air Service had achieved victory ratios that defied belief. Pearl Harbor, 29. Japanese losses, 347 American aircraft destroyed. Philippines 7 losses versus 103 destroyed. Darwin 2 losses versus 30 destroyed. At the center of this dominance flew the Mitsubishi A6M an aircraft that seemed to defy the laws of physics. When captured examples were tested by American engineers in 1942, they initially refused to believe the performance figures. A fighter with the range of a bomber, the maneuverability of a biplane, and the firepower to destroy anything it caught. Warrant Officer Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, Japan's ace of aces with 87 confirmed kills, described the Zero in his diary. Flying the Zero is like wearing wings. The aircraft responds to thought, not just control input. American planes fly like trucks, powerful but clumsy. The Zero achieved its miraculous performance through revolutionary sacrifice. No armor protected the pilot. No self-sealing fuel tanks added weight. Even radios were often removed to save 30 pounds. Every ounce sacrificed for the kill. But here's where this story gets absolutely insane. The First Blood, September 30th, 1943, Marcus Island. Petty Officer First Class Yoshio Fukui was flying escort when he spotted 6 dark blue shapes climbing from the southeast. B-25 bombers on a strange heading, he thought. Then they turned, and he saw the distinctive silhouette. Single-engine, massive fuselage, wings that seemed too short for the body. His first encounter with the F6F Hellcat, Fukui rolled into a diving turn, using standard Zero tactics, superior turn rate to get on the enemy's tail. The heavy American fighter should continue straight, allowing him to curve onto its 6 o'clock position. Instead, something unprecedented happened. The Hellcat didn't run. It didn't try to turn. It went vertical. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, producing 2,000 horsepower, 700 more than the Zero's 130, drove the Hellcat upward at 3,500 feet per minute. Fukui, attempting to follow, watched his airspeed decay as the Zero struggled against gravity. At 15,000 feet, the Hellcat performed a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible for its weight, a hammerhead turn that dropped it directly onto Fukui's tail. The American opened fire at 400 meters, Fukui reported. 6 machine guns, not the 4 we expected. The volume of fire was unprecedented. My aircraft took 17 hits in 3 seconds. Only by dropping into a spin did I escape. Fukui survived, barely making it back with his Zero riddled with holes. His wingman didn't return. Neither did the reconnaissance plane they were escorting. First blood to the Hellcat. The Weight Paradox, October 5th, 1943. Task Force 14 struck Wake Island. Lieutenant Yoshio led 12 Zeros to intercept what appeared to be another hit-and-run raid. We climbed to 20,000 feet, Yoshio recorded. Below us, 12 F6F fighters in 3 divisions. We held every advantage: altitude, position, surprise. Victory was certain. The engagement shattered Japanese tactical doctrine. As the Zeros dove, the Hellcats didn't scatter or turn. They maintained formation, accelerating in a gentle dive that kept their energy high. When the Zeros opened fire at maximum range, the Hellcat simply absorbed the punishment. The Hellcat's armor included 212 pounds of plate protecting the pilot, 110 pounds around the oil system, self-sealing tanks that could take dozens of hits. As the Zeros exhausted their ammunition in diving passes, the Hellcats executed their counterattack, using their weight as a weapon. They came down on us like hawks on sparrows, Yoshio wrote. Their weight gave them speed we couldn't match. They would dive, fire those 6 terrible guns, then climb away before we could react. 8 Zeros were shot down. No Hellcats were lost. But here's what truly broke Japanese confidence. The systematic slaughter. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, June 19, 1944. The Philippine Sea. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa committed Japan's reconstituted carrier force. 9 carriers. 450 aircraft, their best remaining pilots. Against them, Task Force 58 with 15 carriers and 956 aircraft, 450 of them F6F Hellcats. The first wave of 69 Japanese aircraft launched at 8:30. American radar detected them at 150 miles. Hellcats were vectored for interception with perfect positioning. Altitude advantage, sun at their backs, approaching from Japanese blind spots. Lieutenant Zenji Arbe, leading the fighter escort, saw the Hellcats minutes before engagement. They were stacked from 20,000 to 30,000 feet, at least 60 of them, waiting like a steel curtain. We were at 18,000 feet. Every advantage was theirs. The engagement lasted 12 minutes. Of 69 Japanese aircraft, 42 were shot down. Commander David McCampbell shot down 7 aircraft that single day. His wingman got 6. The Zeros tried to turn with us, McCampbell reported. We simply refused. We'd make a high side run, shoot one down, zoom climb back to altitude. They'd try to follow, stall out, and another Hellcat would pick them off. By day's end, Japanese losses, 346 carrier aircraft plus 50 land-based. American losses, 30 aircraft from all causes. American pilots that evening coined the term turkey shoot. The enemy aircraft had been as helpless as game birds. The technology chasm. The disparity was mathematical annihilation, firepower. The Hellcat's 6 Browning M2 machine guns fired 4,500 rounds per minute total. Each 50 caliber bullet delivered 3,500 foot-pounds of energy. The Zero's 7.7 meter guns delivered 750 foot-pounds. Protection. The Hellcat carried 212 pounds of armor. The Zero carried 0. Radar. American pilots were guided by shipboard controllers who could see Japanese aircraft from 50 miles away. Japanese pilots still relied on eyesight. Lieutenant Sadatoshi Komatsu described his first radar-directed interception. We were climbing through clouds when they hit us. No warning, no visual contact. Hellcats diving from above, exactly on our heading. Perfectly positioned. They knew where we were. We were blind men fighting those who could see in the dark. But here's what sealed Japan's doom. The pilot catastrophe pre-war Japanese naval pilots trained for 3 years, entering combat with 700 flight hours. They were artists of aerial combat. By 1944, Japanese pilots were entering combat with 300 hours flight time, often less. Fuel shortages meant training in gliders. Gunnery practice was limited to 50 rounds per pilot. Meanwhile, American pilots arrived with 300 hours minimum, including 50 hours in type. They had fired thousands of practice rounds, learned formation flying, mastered instrument procedures. Lieutenant Commander Yoshihiro Hashimoto, training officer at Kasumigura Naval Air Station, wrote, "We are sending children to fight professionals." Yesterday, Ensign Yamamoto arrived. He had never fired his guns in flight, never flown at night. He lasted 7 minutes in his first combat. The industrial avalanche. While Japan struggled to replace losses, America's production was just beginning. Grumman's Bethpage factory operated 24/7. At peak production, a new Hellcat rolled off the assembly line every 60 minutes. The company produced 12,275 Hellcats in 30 months. In 1944 alone, Japan produced 5,100 fighters of all types. America produced 35,000 fighters. The production system seemed impossible to Japanese observers. Workers using color-coded instructions. Shifts operating around the clock. Quality maintained despite speed. The cultural collision beyond technology. The Hellcat represented a philosophy that invalidated Japanese military doctrine. The samurai tradition emphasized individual excellence, spiritual strength, acceptance of death. The Hellcat embodied systematic efficiency, material superiority, preservation of life. This philosophical gulf meant Japanese pilots couldn't adapt even when they understood Hellcat tactics. Refusing combat when disadvantaged, fundamental to Hellcat doctrine, was literally unthinkable to pilots trained in Bushido. The kamikaze admission. By 1945, unable to compete conventionally, Japan transformed its pilots into guided missiles. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi justified it with stark mathematics. If a Zero attacks conventionally, probability of success is near zero. The Hellcat. The final accounting by war's end. The mathematics were devastating. Hellcat record. Enemy aircraft destroyed 5,223. Lost to enemy fighters 270, kill ratio 19.3 to 1. U.S. Navy aces produced 305 human cost for Japan. Of 18,000 naval aviators who started the war, fewer than 100 combat experienced pilots remained by August 1945. The last laugh. August 15, 1945. Emperor Hirohito's surrender broadcast. Captain Minoru Genda, who had dismissed the Hellcat as weight over finesse, listened at Atsugi Airfield, surrounded by the remnants of Japanese naval aviation. Teenage pilots with 40 hours flight time, aircraft cobbled from spare parts. That same day, Ensign Clarence Moore shot down a Japanese dive bomber at 2:00 p.m., the last aerial victory of World War II. The Japanese pilot, apparently unaware of the surrender, fell to 2 short bursts from the Hellcat's 6 guns. The occupation revelation, September 1945. The first American aircraft to land after surrender were 12 F6F Hellcats from USS Yorktown. Japanese pilots lined the runway to see their tormentor up close. Lieutenant Robert Voss demonstrated the Hellcat's capabilities, casual aerobatics that would have torn a Zero apart. "This isn't even pushing it," Voss told them through an interpreter. "In combat with water injection, it's 20% more powerful. The plane is stressed for 13 Gs. I've never managed to break one." The ultimate truth professor Jiro Horikoshi, designer of the Zero, studied captured Hellcats after the war. His conclusion was devastating. "We designed an aircraft for 1941. They designed an aircraft system for 1945. While we were perfecting the sword, they were building the industrial age." In his final interview before his death in 2000, Saburo Sakai was asked about the Hellcat. "The Zero made Japan a great naval power. The Hellcat made Japan realize it was never as great as it believed. We thought we were samurai. The Hellcat showed us we were just men with outdated weapons facing the future. Every Japanese pilot who survived the war survived because a Hellcat pilot chose to let them live. That is the ultimate defeat, existing at your enemy's discretion." The judgment of history. The F6F Hellcat entered service weighing twice what the Zero weighed. Carrying armor the Zero didn't have. Powered by engines Japan couldn't build. Armed with weapons they couldn't match. Guided by radars they couldn't detect. Flown by pilots they couldn't equal. Produced in numbers they couldn't comprehend. Japanese pilots had laughed at it because they didn't understand that every extra pound represented not weakness, but the strength of an industrial democracy that could afford to protect its warriors. By the time they understood, their laughter had turned to last letters home, their mockery to kamikaze missions, their confidence to complete collapse. The Hellcat hadn't just defeated the Zero. It had destroyed an entire philosophy of warfare, proving that in modern combat, the nation that could build the better system would destroy the nation that could only build better warriors. The Japanese pilots had laughed at the F6F Hellcat. The Hellcat had the last laugh. It always did.